If you have wind chimes hanging at your doorstep, you better take them down quickly because it's highly likely to attract something otherworldly. The story unfolds on my 8th birthday when my parents took me to the countryside to visit my grandparents. Being the apple of their eye, I was showered with various gifts. My uncle even ordered a large cake for me from the city. It was a day filled with joy. After devouring the cake, I eagerly unwrapped my gifts. Among them was a relatively large box my mom mentioned was a gift from my aunt, who couldn't make it due to a busy work schedule. I opened the package to find something peculiar, a wind chime. Curious, I asked my mom about it. She explained that it could be hung on the door or window and would make a pleasant sound when the wind blew. My dad hung the wind chime on the bedroom door, and sure enough, it swayed and made a melodious sound whenever the wind blew. Little did we know that trouble would brew that very night. I can't say how long I had been asleep when the wind chime's tinkling woke me up abruptly. Turning my head, I saw the wind chime swinging, but the door was closed, and there was no wind. Perplexed, I suddenly noticed a figure in the room, an old woman. I couldn't see her face clearly, but she walked noiselessly, straight as an arrow. She headed towards my grandparents' room. This sight terrified me, and I burst into tears, alerting my parents. When my mom inquired, I described the strange old woman entering my grandmother's room. Thinking it was just a nightmare, my mom assured me that the door was closed and no one could enter. Sobbing, I insisted that I saw the old woman, who walked without making a sound. Concerned, my mom took it seriously and sent my dad to check on my grandparents. He lightly knocked on their door, and they let him in. There, my grandmother was sitting on the kang, a traditional Chinese heated bed, looking unwell. My mom asked what happened, and my grandfather explained that my grandmother had a bad dream about an old friend who had passed away. This surprised my parents. My dad asked me to check the wall with family photos to see if the old woman was among them. As I approached the wall, my eyes widened with fear when I saw a picture of my grandmother standing with a woman, the same old woman I had seen earlier. Trembling, I pointed to the photo and said, "It's the woman standing next to Grandma." My dad, unfamiliar with the person, asked my grandfather about her. He explained that she was a friend who used to play cards with my grandmother and had passed away the previous week. My grandmother dreamed that the woman asked her for money, claiming she had none for card games on the other side. The next day, my grandmother fell ill, prompting my grandfather to perform a ritual at the door using ash from the kang. He burned a lot of paper, offering it to the departed friend. Surprisingly, my grandmother recovered afterward. Terrified by the experience, my dad quickly took down the wind chime. Since then, whenever I hear the sound of wind chimes, I can't help but feel an inexplicable sense of fear and unease. The next incident took place in 2009 in the fishing village of Yuminzui, Nandao, Qingdao, Shandong Province. In October, Li Zongping and several workers were hired for renovations on a seaside villa. Upon arrival, they discovered the grandeur of the villa, which seemed odd as it was only partially renovated. Despite their curiosity, they focused on the job, intending to finish it quickly and get paid. After a day of hard work, they decided to stay overnight in the villa instead of returning home. The men enjoyed some drinks and went to sleep early. However, around midnight, they were awakened by strange, chattering noises outside, like something creeping into their minds. Alarmed, they immediately got up, afraid that someone might be stealing their belongings. They turned on the lights, and the noises disappeared. When they turned the lights off, the noises resumed. Feeling uneasy, they speculated it might be the sound of waves, unfamiliar to their ears. To investigate, the three men grabbed flashlights and ventured outside. Strangely, the noises vanished once again. They circled the villa, but found no signs of intruders. Thinking it was just the sound of the sea, they returned inside. However, the noises resumed, louder and clearer. Coming from outside the window, they peered down to see something that chilled them to the bone, figures emerging from the sea, their bodies decomposed by the water. These ghostly apparitions, soaked and rotten, slowly approached the villa. The men, petrified, watched in horror. Fortunately, the water ghosts didn't notice them that night, sparing them from a potential encounter. Li Zongping and his crew, too frightened to stay, decided to leave the next morning, abandoning the villa. Later, when Li Zongping inquired about the location, locals referred to it as Soul's Cape, a place where drowned spirits gather at night. Curiously, in the nearby waters, bodies of those who drowned were often found drifting towards Soul's Cape, creating a peculiar phenomenon. Despite the villa being renovated, no one dared to live there, leaving it abandoned and eerie silent.